Let me show you how I made this easy to make valet box. I'm starting with the Sapele board that is 2 inches thick and measures 7 3/4 inches wide and 18 inches long. I will be able to get all the parts I need from this one board by resawing it at the bandsaw. I'm drawing a center line to guide me while I resaw this board at the bandsaw. Now that the pieces have been resawn, I let them sit overnight before milling them to the final thickness. I plane the side pieces down to a 1/2 inch and the bottom panel down to a 1/4 inch in thickness. With the pieces at their final thickness, I cut the side pieces to 2.5 inches in width. I clean up any saw marks using my hand plane. I'm using my number 4 smoothing plane. I'm using my number 4 to remove any milling marks left from the planer. This will smooth the boards and allow me to bypass a majority of the sanding. I'm having to glue up 2 pieces for the bottom panel since I don't have a single board that is wide enough. With the miter already cut on one side, I mark the final length. I sneak up on my mark, giving me the perfect length. Without moving the board, I turn the saw off and bump the stop block up to the back of the board, allowing me to cut the other side piece to the exact same length. I'm putting my dado blades in to cut the groove for the bottom panel. I use a 1/4 inch brass bar to help me set the height of the blades. The groove will be a 1/4 inch from the bottom and a 1/4 inch deep. Now that the glue is dried on the bottom panel, I use my hand plane to smooth the surface and to remove any glue. At the miter saw, I cut the panel to its final size. Now it's time to glue up the box. I lay the box parts face down and apply a painter's tape on the back to act as clamps. Since I'm using a solid wood for the bottom panel, I don't put any glue in the grooves. This will allow the wood to move during season changes. My box was a little out of square, so I used some quick clamps on the ends of the box to try to fix that problem. The glue is now dried, so I removed the clamps and the tape. I guess I didn't check during the glue up, but the box sides weren't exactly flush. I used my number 4 to flush the top, but I will show you a simple jig that you can build that will allow you to use sandpaper. All you need is a flat board, some carpet tape, and sandpaper. I put a couple of pieces of double-sided carpet tape on a flat board. In the video, I'm using a piece of melamine. It's a nice flat surface that you can reference. I cut 3 strips of 120 grit sandpaper. Make sure your sanding board is wide enough for your box. I used a pencil to mark the bottom of the box, and when the pencil mark is gone, I know I've got the bottom flat. Using even pressure, push the box back and forth, removing stock from the bottom. Be careful not to push too hard. After about 10 seconds, stop and check the progress. It may take you a few sessions of sanding to get it flat. If you have some gaps in your miters, mix this fine dust with some glue and fill the gaps. I round over all the edges with a 1/8 inch round over bit at the router table. I flip the box over and round over the edges on both the inside and outside panels. For the areas that the router bit couldn't reach, I used a chisel and some 120 grit sandpaper to round the edge. I'm marking the location for the miter keys. I'm using my 1/4 inch dado stack set to 1/4 inch high. To see how I made this miter key jig, check simplecove.com/Sean. I'll also leave a link in the description box below. I'm using 1/4 inch thick maple for the miter key slots I just cut. Remember that fine sawdust I mentioned earlier? Well, I found a gap and now I'm using it to fill it. I use my flush trim saw to cut off the excess miter keys. If the key is still proud of the surface, use a sharp chisel to pare away the rest. I hand sand the box with 220 grit sandpaper to prep it for finish. I applied 3 coats of a medium sheen Waterlox to the box. To apply the finish, I'm just using a foam brush. I wrap my glove around the bowl to seal the finish between coats. After about 24 hours, I apply the second coat. I normally don't sand after the first coat since it's mostly absorbed into the wood and is pretty thin. After the second coat dries, I sand the box with 220 grit sandpaper. To remove the dust, I wipe it down with a tack cloth. Now it's time for the third and final coat. Try not to put on a thick coat as you want it to dry as soon as possible. I normally thin the finish but was out of mineral spirits. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel.